Hello, Ryan Kurczak here, and welcome back to Kriya Yoga Online. Today's topic, we're going to be exploring depression, addressing depression through meditation or through your spiritual practice. And this is a continuation of the previous video that addressed anxiety. So if you haven't watched that video, again, you can go to Kriya Yoga Online. That is youtube.com/Kriya Yoga Online. And review the previous video where we discussed dealing with anxiety specifically with yoga and meditation. So, first of all, grief, depression, feeling morose, feeling despondent. These are all natural aspects of being alive, and they come to all of us from time to time. And some of us, they strike a little harder than others. But we have to remember this is a natural aspect of life. And one of the problems that a lot of people have with grief or depression is that they have grief or depression, meaning they don't want it. They want to push it away, or they want to experience something totally different. So first thing is to realize that it's perfectly natural to experience that from time to time, and it's best not to make a big deal out of it, assuming it's not debilitating or it's not a chronic issue for you. But when it comes to meditation and yogic meditation, we don't necessarily want to use meditation specifically for healing or for working through grief, although that will be, again, a side benefit or a side effect from it. But we can use the process of meditation, breath awareness, mantra meditation, various exercises to allow us to be centered, to calm the mind, and then if we need to sit and process, or if we need to sit with grief and be with grief so that it can resolve itself, so that we can digest it, meditation can be very helpful in that regard. So if you are dealing with a passing acute aspect of grief, meaning maybe you've had some loss or something came up for you and you're mourning, well, you can use meditation to get calm, to get clear, to sit with it and be with it so that you can properly digest and integrate it. And the best kinds of practices to use are body awareness practices and breath awareness practices, particularly when it comes to hatha yoga and yoga. When you've done an asana practice, you've moved through the postures, you've done your physical exercise, and now you're laying down in shavasana or corpse pose on your back, turning your attention to your body. That can be a very powerful time to process and work through issues of grief, because that is where grief becomes stored, is within the body, within the energetic system, within the nervous system, within the tissues. And if we don't process it, if we don't integrate it or digest it, it can turn into more chronic issues later on. Now, as you know, as I mentioned in the last video, my undergraduate was in psychology and also philosophy. So again, you have to take these opinions for what they're worth, because I never really went beyond that in regards to formal education. But I have studied various alternative healing modalities, and I've spent quite a lot of time in meditation and studying meditation, teaching and practicing meditation. And grief and anxiety, these sorts of things come up a lot for individuals. But the philosophical aspect of it is very important, and this is probably one of the reasons why I got into meditation and yoga, was because of my interest in philosophy and my undergraduate philosophical background, is that we have a lot of questions. And sometimes the reason we have grief is because we have questions that aren't answered. You know, why does suffering occur? Why did this difficult thing happen to me? What is the point of all of this? And one of the fantastic aspects of meditation, particularly yogic meditation, is the capacity to get those questions answered. So we always have to remember that in the meditation and yogic meditation process, we don't necessarily just want to hypnotize ourselves with a mantra or with a pranayama routine. We don't want to experience a trance state. We actually want to experience more clarity of consciousness, more width and breadth of consciousness, attunement to that infinite intelligence that allows our body to be here, for this world to exist, for our capacity to perceive and act within the world. And this information is there. So if we are experiencing grief or depression, specifically depression, if it's a chronic depression, something that you can't quite shake, that there's no immediate reason for you to experience this depression, meditation can be very helpful because you can feel that sensation of depression. You practice your meditation technique, you acknowledge where you feel that state of depression within the body, in the heart, behind the eyes, a full body sensation. And then you want to sincerely ask the question, what is this all about? Or if you want to know, what's the point of life? Whatever that question is that causes this depression, ask it with sincerity. Again, not to dramatically ask it where you don't really want the answer, but to really ask as if you're talking to someone that you can trust who has the answer. Why do I feel this? What is this all about? And what you'll find is, if you can contemplate in that way, you will have the capacity to have your questions answered. You'll realize the source of the issue, whether it's a lifestyle choice that you're making, or something from the past that you haven't resolved, or if it's simply just a philosophical question that you're hung up on. These things can be resolved through contemplative practices. So your meditation needs to be solidly grounded, where you can use a mantra, use breath awareness, use a particular technique. And you can refer to other videos on this channel, youtube.com/Kriya Yoga Online, for advice on meditation and meditation techniques. There's enough there for you. But then after that, you want to explore the reasons of your grief. And again, the idea is not to always be looking for a reason for the grief, but if you're feeling it at that moment, ask, why? What is this all about? Where is this coming from? And sit with it for as long as you need until you have the revelation. That could be a 20-minute meditation. It could happen like that. You get the answer. It could be weeks. It could be months of focusing on it, contemplating it, until you finally have the unfoldment of the answer. And it'll be like light breaking on you, like the sun coming up. All of a sudden, the light's there. You understand it, and you can move on. So the key is to not rush the process. If you are grieving, or if you do have an immediate reason to be depressed about something, you're not trying to push it away. You're digesting it. But if you have long-term depression, and you want to be working with it with a psychological professional, but you can use meditation as a supplement. But if you have long-term depression, meditation can help you find the root cause and integrate those issues that are contributing to your depression. So you need to stay with it for as long as you particularly need. Again, with the idea that you are not obsessing over it, because too often, and you might know people who are like this, they obsess over their depression, or they're so attached and identified with it that they can't see any other way. And this can even be true for people who are on that crusade to rid themselves of their depression. When you're on a crusade to rid yourself of something, well, you need to have that in order to feel validated and valuable. So even when you feel like you're really trying to move through it, you need to be very aware of what might be going on subtly for you. This battle with depression might be something that you identify with, and you wouldn't know what to do if it wasn't there. Okay? And so you might need to explore that in your meditation as well. So we need to stay with it for as long as is necessary. But there may come a time where we need to decide to move on. And what do I mean by that? Well, there are numerous reasons why depression can be there. First of all, life is difficult. Things come and they go, and not everything works out as we would like it to. That's just a part of life. And the resilient people are the people who can acknowledge that this bad thing happened, or I wish it was different, or I'm angry about this. And they integrate it, and they move on, and they keep living their life. So you need to have something to look forward to, something to identify yourself with beyond depression. Maybe you want to learn to play a musical instrument. Maybe you want to write a book. Maybe you want to get a new job. Maybe you want to become a professional in some field. You need to decide to have a goal. And then instead of putting all your attention on figuring out what's the depression about, you need to put about 75% of your time on achieving that goal. And what you'll find is that if you're able to work this through with a psychological professional, if you're using meditation as an aid to free up and digest whatever unresolved, unintegrated emotions are there. Just by putting your attention on something else, by working towards something, you won't even notice the depression. So again, we're not trying to invalidate the experience of depression or grief. We definitely want to honor it. But there does need to come a time where you decide to do, be, or experience something different. And that can take effort, and that's going to take persistence, and it might feel like you are being completely fake about it in the beginning because you're so used to being in that rut of depression. But you can change your mind and your consciousness through your willpower, through your choice. You can even ask, if you have a spiritual tradition, the grace of the divinity within that tradition, God, Buddha, Divine Mother, whatever it might be, ask for help to turn your eyes towards something brighter, to let you move beyond this so that you can express your unique individuality as this divine aspect of consciousness. So whatever you need to do, you need to put yourself on a different path. But again, that's after you've already gone through a process of acknowledging, doing as much work as you can. When you can't do any more, start doing something different. Now, some very practical things to be aware of with depression is diet and exercise. When you are physically healthy, you are less likely to succumb to depression. And many people who are involved in meditation, they like to kind of sit still and meditate. They don't like to get up and move so much. So I'd like to encourage you to explore an exercise routine, a daily exercise routine, to get the body moving, to get the hormones within your body balanced again. And you might need to do that, like I said, once a day. What are some good practices to work into? Well, running can be a very good one, or jogging. Again, make sure you do that intelligently. Qigong, however you pronounce that. Qigong can be very good, daily yoga practice. Also, some kind of activity at least 3 times a week that gets you sweating and gets your heart rate up. Again, if you're healthy enough to do that. But if you're not healthy enough to do that, well, that's a telling sign. But work up to being able to do some kind of intense cardiovascular routine that gets you sweating. And you might find that that alone can help you work through depression. So you want to use meditation as a tool, remembering that really the point of meditation is for self-realization, divine realization, maturing yourself spiritually. The side benefit can be working with grief and depression. But you need to work with a professional if you need it, as well as take time to exercise daily. Do breathing practices, yogic breathing practices like alternate nostril breathing, particularly alternate nostril breathing. And you can explore, you can Google that, alternate nostril breathing, for directions on how to do it. Or again, on this channel, Kriya Yoga Online, youtube.com/Kriya Yoga Online. I do discuss how to practice alternate nostril breathing, but doing that regularly, 12 to 24 rounds a day, twice a day. What's that doing? Well, it's balancing the left and right hemispheres of the brain, getting better coherence in the nervous system. It's also balancing the lunar and solar channels within the body, so the energies within the body. So if there's any undigested emotions, if there's any blocked prana or life force, it helps to move that through. So breathing practices, or simply doing deep breathing, abdominal breathing for 5 minutes in the morning and at night. 3 times a day, we'll say. In the morning, at lunchtime, and at night. Again, Google abdominal breathing, figure out how to do it right, and do it for 5 minutes a day. That can go a long way to work through depression or difficulties in that regard. And finally, a lot of times people experience depression or a feeling of isolation because they don't necessarily have a good relationship with a higher power. And the more isolated you feel as a limited human being, the more likely you are to feel depression. So starting a prayer practice that attunes you to divinity in some way, whatever works for you, that can be very helpful, and be very intense about it. So a very intense devotional practice that can sometimes radically shift a person's consciousness from experiencing emotional difficulty to experiencing more peace and ease. Being of service once a week. That's always been a fantastic cure. As a Vedic astrologer, I work with a lot of people who suffer from issues dealing with Saturn, the planet of poverty and grief and depression and death. And one of the remedies for that is to volunteer to help people who are less fortunate than you. And you might find that that kind of giving really generates a state of compassion, a state of joy, because you're able to be of assistance to the world. Essentially, what you need to do is, instead of trying to apply all of these things at once that I've listed, is to go back and re-listen to this talk, re-listen to this video, and write down maybe 1 or 2 things that you can do in a month and develop those. And then the next month, come back and watch the video and listen to some other things that I've mentioned and try to add 1 or 2 more things, because you want to take a step-by-step approach towards overcoming depression or overcoming grief or integrating it and moving on. So look at it over a long-term time frame. Apply 1 or 2 of these remedies at a time. Maybe you start exercising 1 month. Maybe the next month you start meditating more. And as you meditate, you ask the questions, where is this grief coming from? Maybe the 3rd month you start integrating more breathing practices, pranayama practices, or alternate nostril breathing, as I mentioned. Maybe on the 4th month you start to develop a goal towards reconnecting to divinity through your own particular spiritual path. So get a journal out, write this down, make this a very decisive, intentional process. Only then will you really be able to move beyond this, because it is something that you have to use your willpower to initiate the procedure, to, in a sense, outgrow it, if you will. I'll have one more technique for you, which can be very helpful. But again, I just want to reiterate that this whole talk is in no way, shape, or form aiming to deny processing grief. You want to embrace it. You don't want to push it away. It's a natural part of life. As life changes, and things come and they go, and there's loss and there's gain. But you don't want to dwell on it either. And eventually you become more resilient, and you're able to be with the grief or the depression if it's there for a day or 2 or a week, and then it passes, and then you can live your life again. And that gets shorter and shorter the more resilient you become, the more, in a sense, mature you become in regards to what the causes of grief are. And meditation can help you with that. So one final technique I'd like to encourage you to experiment with is a bit of a breathing procedure and visualization, which has helped quite a lot of people with chronic depression or feelings of hopelessness that they can't quite put their finger on why it's happening. And that is a meditation technique where you bring your attention here, so right here, in between your eyebrows, and then in between your temples. So you can touch your temples and rub them so you're able to get the feeling of that space, and also right in between the eyebrows and the forehead. So you want to be able to feel that space. And so again, at first you can rub them just so that you know what it feels like. And then when you're done, you just let your hands fall down, rest them on your lap. And if you're meditating, you want to do this about 5 minutes. You can do your abdominal breathing. Imagine or feel that you are breathing in through the frontal regions of the brain and the temple simultaneously. So just like you can feel the breath coming in through your nose and flowing out, imagine that you have that same feeling coming in through your temples and coming in through your spiritual eye, your 6th chakra here, the frontal lobes of the brain. So as you sit meditating, you breathe in, you imagine breath or life force flowing in to those 3 points. You hold the breath for just an instant, you exhale, you imagine the breath flowing out of those 2 points. And you do this for about 5 minutes. And what this is helping to do is to potentially balance the endocrine glands in your brain by bringing awareness to them. Secondarily, it's circulating life force through this region, this energetic region, which can allow you to be more optimistic, more forward-thinking, more happy. It can also stimulate the frontal lobes of the brain, which is associated with that. You can do this in meditation for 5 minutes, twice a day. So you don't want to go overboard with it, where you're trying to do it all the time. So you want to make sure that you do it at a set period twice a day. When you're falling asleep at night, you can do this, try this for a week. As you fall asleep, practice this. Gentle breathing, feeling as though life force or breath is flowing through these 3 points all at the same time. So as the breath comes in, it flows in. As you breathe out, it flows out. And fall asleep doing this practice. And this can go a long way in alleviating symptoms of depression or anxiety or hopelessness. I found it work with myself and also with many other individuals. So experiment with that. It's a little technique I discovered. Okay, well, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful for you. I'd like to encourage you to, again, review the video on anxiety, the previous video on this channel. Review the videos that deal with meditation so you can learn how to meditate well. And start engaging some of these recommendations and advice, and see how they work for you. And feel free to post your comments and let me know how it's going. So be well, and thank you very much.